2 or 3 years ago, social justice warriors would often be dismissed as whiny snowflakes that don't have the self-discipline to hold down a real job and won't be able to get a job anyway with a useless degree in their chosen flavour of grievance studies. But in the interim, we've learned that not only are they getting jobs, they're infusing the corporations they work for with their woke belief systems. The firing of James Damore by Google was the perfect example of just how far the cult of diversity has penetrated. After penning what many scientists in the field regarded as a perfectly legitimate treatment of the science around sex differences and how they may influence career choices, Damore was fired, labelled a misogynist, and became a poster child for the worst of the bro culture in the tech industry. And so is anyone really surprised to hear that Microsoft has its own in-house James Damore, with the added twist that this time it's a woman? According to Quartz, a female Microsoft program manager wrote a couple of posts on an internal online messaging board criticising Microsoft's diversity initiatives, describing them as discriminatory hiring, and suggested that women are less suited for engineering roles. These posts subsequently elicited more than 800 comments, some in support of the views and some against. Now, the person responsible for the post has not made herself public at this time. So this publication, Quartz, managed to get access to lengthy sections of the internet discussion provided by Microsoft employees. Here's one of the quotes. Does Microsoft have any plans to end current policy that financially incentivizes discriminatory hiring practices? To be clear, I'm referring to the fact that senior leadership is awarded more money if they discriminate against Asians and white men. I have an ever-increasing file of white male Microsoft employees who have faced outright and overt discrimination because they had the misfortune of being born both white and male. This is unacceptable. Now let's hear the response from Microsoft. A Microsoft staff member who leads the team that helps the board of directors determine executive pay explained the diversity-based compensation initiative. Our board and executive leadership team believe diverse and inclusive teams are good for business and consistent with our mission and inspire to culture. Linking compensation to these aspirations is an important demonstration of executive commitment to something we strongly believe in. So let me translate that corporate bullshit speak for you. Our commitment to the cult of diversity justifies our discriminatory policies. And of course it does. Forced diversity by its nature is explicitly discriminatory because it bases hiring decisions on innate characteristics such as race and sex. And that's why any gender quota is a discriminatory policy. A Microsoft's employee investigations team responded to the initial post in January, writing that the company does not tolerate discrimination of any kind. Well, that's just simply not true. You do discriminate, you just hide it behind the dog whistle of diversity. The mere mention of the word is supposed to make you feel all good inside, so you'll ignore what's actually going on. Now, the article takes an interesting turn here, repeating the bald-faced lies of many left-leaning media outfits when it says, the Microsoft author echoes former Google employee James Damore, who in 2017 wrote a memo that went internally viral at Google, leaning on pseudoscience to argue that women aren't cut out for the tech industry. As I've said in many a video before, you can only make those kind of ignorant statements if either you haven't read the memo or have an ideological axe to grind. Many scientists supported what Damore wrote, and he did not argue that women aren't cut out for the tech industry. Damore was fired for breaching the company's code of conduct amid enormous public and internal controversy. And Google CEO Sundar Pichai wrote in a memo that the firing was due to advancing harmful stereotypes in our workplace. Remember that Damore's memo was in direct response to a request for feedback by Google after a diversity training workshop that Damore attended. He didn't just write some angry screed out of the blue. And whenever you see harmful gender stereotypes, what it really means is stereotypes we don't like, regardless of whether they're accurate or not. Here's another selection of what the Microsoft employee wrote. I'll post the link in the comments, but I just want to focus on the middle section because I think it is the most important. We still lack any empirical evidence that the demographic distribution in tech is rationally and logically detrimental to the success of the business in this industry. We have a plethora of data available that demonstrate women are less likely to be interested in engineering at all than men. And it's not because of any ism or phobia or unconscious bias, it's because men and women think very differently from each other. And the specific types of thought process and problem solving required for engineering of all kinds, software or otherwise, are simply less prevalent among women. This is an established fact. However, this established fact makes people very uncomfortable because it suggests that the gender distribution in engineering might not actually be a problem, and thus women can no longer bleat about being victims of sexism in the workplace. These facts are ignored in favour of meaningless platitudes our senior leadership team continues to shove down our throats, e.g., we're not doing enough and we clearly have a long way to go. I really can't add anything to that, it's really well put. But even if you don't believe men and women have different preferences, you're a science-denying blank slatist, how much diversity can you expect at any tech company in the US, given the percentage of computer science degrees earned by women, currently at around 18%. As author of this piece from the AEI, Mark Perry states, if the female share of veterinary medicine degrees in a previously male-dominated field increased from a minority share in the mid-80s to an 80% share in the recent years, at the same time that the female share of computer science degrees went from 37% to 18%, shouldn't both of those trends be considered the direct result of individual preferences and voluntary choices? And if gender underrepresentation is a concern when women are in the minority, like computer science, why isn't it a concern when men are in the minority, like in veterinary medicine? Well, of course, silly old Mark has forgotten the golden rule. It's only ever discrimination when women are in the minority. Of course, given the pipeline of female computer science graduates, what will end up happening is that large companies like Google and Microsoft that have swallowed the diversity Kool-Aid will scoop up the vast majority of females, leaving the smaller firms that are not as fixated on diversity with a lot less diversity. Now, to me, and I expect a lot of you that have been following this trend for a while, these revelations from Microsoft are not at all surprising. It's a direct result of the cult of diversity and inclusion informed by the postmodernist approach to grievance studies at the university level, and we are now reaping the whirlwind of that deeply illiberal movement. So don't be surprised when more stories surface like this one in organisations that are attempting to ram diversity down their employees' throats. Let's just hope more people are willing to come forward and call it out. As usual, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you next time.